Hello guys, Alan here, and this is the most authoritative Revit tutorial channel you can ever find on YouTube. And this video is going to be a part 2 of our roof series inside of Revit. So we are going to extend our studies a little bit. We are going to talk a little more about our roofs inside of Revit. I think in our previous section we spoke about the roof by footprint. We spoke about this roof by footprint and then roof by I think we didn't talk about the roof by extrusion and also roof by face. We'll be covering that in this video. So without wasting much time, I'm going to get started. And before I get started, if you're watching this video and you haven't liked or subscribed to my channel, make sure you subscribe to my channel. It's going to help me out a lot. And if you have any comments you want to add or you would want to ask questions, make sure you drop it in the comment section and I'll do well to respond to each and every single one of my subscribers in there. So thank you guys. Now I'm going to get started. Now today in this video we're going to talk about the roof by extrusion, then we go on to talk about the roof by face, and then we are going to talk about how we can create our flat roofs inside of Revit. So I'm going to get started. So we are going to head into our roof icon in here, but before I do that, let me just kind of draw a wall out a little bit. Let me just draw a simple wall in there, and I think I'm going to go with, okay, I think I'm going to go with a generic 300. All right, so I'm just going to draw out a simple wall in there, and then I'm going to show you guys how we can use that roof by extrusion too. So this roof is out, these walls are out in there, and let me head into the default 3D view. So when I head into the default 3D view, you're going to notice our walls are going way above the level line in there. So what we can do is we can make sure we select only our walls in there, and then we are going to head into our properties panel in there, and with our top constraint we are going to change that up to level 2. So all our walls are going to go up all the way to level 2 in there. This is perfect. Now, I think my walls are going way too big in there. Okay, I'm going to leave it as it is. Head into my 3D view, and I'm going to add some shadows in there by just clicking on this icon in there. All right, so this is perfect. Now let me head into level 1. Okay, let me just stay in the 3D view. Now I'm going to head into my roof icon in there. Make sure you're in the architecture tab, and then when you head into your build panel in there, so we are going to click on the drop down menu right beneath that roof in there, and then we are going to select our roof by extrusion in there. So I'm going to click on that roof by extrusion in there, and we are going to have this pop-up menu in there which says we have to now pick a plane or we can pick a reference line. And in our case in here, we do not have a reference line created in there. So you can see in there in the drop down menu we have none in there, so we definitely have to pick a plane in there. All right, so if you have been watching my videos, I've been explaining what this icon really means in here, so you're going to see that. So we are in a 3D view, so definitely we need to pick a plane. All right, if we're in an elevation view as well or in a section view, we'll have to also pick a plane as well in there. All right, so we're going to pick a plane in here, so make sure you select your pick a plane and then you hit on OK in there. So when we select that in here, I'm going to select the front of this surface in here, which you can see is south elevation. All right, so just pay attention to that. You can see I'm just focusing, trying to see where that cube is facing in there. So you can see I have that on the south elevation, so I'm going to pick the surface of this cube in there. So you can see I have that blue highlighted line in there, so I can just click right in there, and we are going to have this pop-up menu again, which is basically just going to tell us where do we want to draw our roofs from. All right, so we definitely want to draw that roof also from our level 2 line in there. So we want that roof host, the roof host level should be on level 2. We don't want to draw the roof on level 1. All right, so you need to make sure you draw it on the level that you want to draw that in there. So we definitely want to draw that in level 2, and if you want an offset for that roof, you can basically add that offset in there for that roof as well, but we do not want an offset in our case. I just want that to go all the way up to level 2 in there. So I'm going to select OK in there, and I'm going to run away and get into any of the elevation views, so I can see that's my south elevation view. Now you notice we have this green dashed lines in there, which is setting as our reference plane all over in level 2, which means that we can draw that roof in there, which is perfect. Now I'm going to use my spline tool to kind of like just create a more tricky roof, a more fantastic roof in there. So I'm going to select that roof, that spline tool, that my draw tool, which is the spline tool in there, and I'm going to start from somewhere around here, and I'm just going to bring this here and just click right here, and also send this somewhere around here and bring this here, and I'm going to finish this somewhere around here. Okay, so escape out of the way, and if I select that in there, you're going to notice we have this kind of bubbles circles in there. All right, so you notice with the end parts, all right, with this one in here, with the first bubble in here and the second bubble in here, they are quite the same, but when you look on these bubbles in between in here, they are different from this one. All right, so when I select this in there, you're going to notice it's going to scale up. If I move that in there, it's kind of like scaling up my roof in there, reducing that roof in there. But if I select this and then I move this, it's just shaping up that roof in there. All right, so you need to pay attention to that as well. But we can actually make that this also shape that roof in there by just placing, make sure you place your mouse pointer in there, and then you hit on your tab key once, and then you can now move that, and it's not going to scale that in there, which is perfect. So that's one thing you need to know. I learned that from Balkan Architect, so you need to note that as well. So you can do the same for this other part as well. Just hit on your tab key once, make sure your mouse pointer is on that dot in there, and then you hit on your tab key once, and then you can shape that also in there. So I think I'm fine with the way my roof shape is going in here, and then we can hit on finish in there. All right, so now let's head into our 3D view, and you're going to notice we have this wavy roof in there, which is perfect. We have that wave roof in there. So with our start end extrusion, we can come in here and then we can give that about 600, and then you notice that extends 600 away from the wall in there. And we'll need to also do the same for that side in there. So you can go into your extrusion end in there, and you can change this to 9. Okay, just Control Z in there to bring back my roof. So I'm going to select my roof in there, and I'm going to change this to 9 in there. I just want to make sure that is also perfect in there. So change this back to 3 and just add 600 in there. So just change this to 6 and perfect. So now this is also going to be as the same dimension as this in there. I just like things to be a little bit equal in there. But what you can do is you can click on that roof in there, and you can also hold on this arrow and extend that in there if you want that to extend in there, which is perfect. You can also make that extend as well to one side if maybe you have a balcony in there with that wavy roof also going all the way in there. So we can finish this roof in here. So we can finish this roof in there, and what we can also do is we do not like that spaces in between, that space in between our roof in there. So what we can do is we can just hover your mouse pointer right. You can place your mouse pointer right on any of the walls in there. Right, so I'm going to select this wall. So don't click on it, just put your mouse pointer on it, on that wall in there, and then just hit on your tab key once, and then it selects that roof. Then you just click on all those walls in there, and then you select your top base in there, and then you attach all of that to that roof in there. So we have this in here, which is going to attach to all of those roofs in there, which is perfect. So now that's just one thing you need to know about this roof extrusion tool in there. Now I'm going to select this roof extrusion tool. I'm going to head into my properties panel and under my construction tab. Now we have the option. Before I get into the construction tab, I'm going to select that roof again, and we have our reference level 2. Okay, this is perfect. And with under the construction tab, I'm going to talk about that now. We have our plumb cut in there, so you can change that in there. It's going to give you all those features, just as the pick wall 2 also gives us in there. We have the 2 cut in there, so I'm going to change that to plumb cut in there, which is exactly the roof construction type I want to use in there. Now I can show you guys another way we can actually change this roof to have pick up our vertical in there. So use this vertical opening in there. All right, so before I do that in here, I'm going to draw that roof to be on the side in here. So I'm going to delete this out of the way. I'm going to head into level 2 in there, and I'm going to draw a reference plane in here. All right, so I'm going to draw that reference plane to move all the way in here in an angle this way. All right, so I'm going to make sure I draw that reference plane in here to an angle. Let me just use the 45 angle in there. So this is perfect. Let me select that and extend this a little bit. Now before you can do this, you need to make sure you name that reference plane in there. So I'm going to call this roof 1 in here, and just finish that out of the way. So this is perfect, and we are going to head into our 3D view. We're going to head into our 3D view in here, and we are going to draw. Let me get back into level 2, and I'm going to draw a section line right behind that roof in there. All right, so this is perfect, and extend that to go all the way out in there. Okay, so this is perfect in here, and I can open that section up by just clicking in here, and then you get into your section tab in here. All right, so now you're going to use that roof extrusion, the roof by extrusion tool in there again. So I'm going to click on that drop down menu, select my roof by extrusion, and this time we are going to pick our reference plane. So we are going to make sure we select our name in there, and then we click on that drop down menu in there, and then we have our reference plane in there. So we're going to select our reference level 1 in here, and we want that on level 2, and then we finish that in there. So we are going to select our spline 2, and I'm going to draw this in here again, and just bring this all the way somewhere around in here. Okay, I'm going to finish this here. All right, so escape out of there. I'm going to pull this down a little bit, and just extend this up a little bit as well, and just hit on the tab key once, and then I'm going to extend this here. Okay, so I think I'm fine. Okay, just hit on the tab key, and I'm going to bring this down a little bit. All right, so this is perfect. I think I'm fine with the way my roof is going in there, and I'm going to finish that. Head into my 3D view, and you're going to notice we have this slanted part of our roof in there, our wavy roof in here. So I'm going to move this in here, somewhere around in here, and I'm going to hit on the tab key once, select all those walls attached to top base, and then select my roof in there. So we have this wavy roof in there going in a slanted direction in there. So now I'm going to head into level 2, and I'm going to show you guys how we can use our vertical opening in here. Right, so how we can shape that roof to be vertically positioned on that roof in there. So we are going to select our vertical drawing tool in there, and we're just going to create a simple vertical opening in there. So we are going to select that in there, and we need to give it a radius and offset. So I'm going to give it an offset of about 300 in there, and I'm going to select this and to this part in here, and I'm going to finish. Now you are not supposed to finish that just in here. So now if I should finish that in here, look at what our roof is going to give us. It's going to give us an error in there which says it's going to detach our roof in there. So we do not want that. We can select our detach in there. Now let me get into the 3D view so you see what we have in there. So now you're going to notice we have just this vertical opening going all the way in our roof in there, but let me show you guys a trick. When I head back into level 2, and then I click on my vertical opening in there, and I should just create just this shape all around in our roof in here. So let me just create this in there, all around in there, and TR, I'm going to trim this to this, and then I finish this in here, and then I head into our 3D view. You notice it cuts out that roof in there and shapes that roof vertically to fit on that in there. So initially our roof was slanted in a wavy form this way, but now it placed that in here, which is perfect. Now you're going to notice we have these errors in there, and what I learned by background architect is we can just move that in there, and then it fixes that in there, or you can go into the edit extrusion and then you extend that in there. All right, so we are going to select, make sure we put that mouse pointer on that wall, hit on the tab key once, select all those walls, and then we attach all of that to our top roof in there, and this is perfect. I think I'm happy with how our roof by extrusion is coming out in there. So it has that offset of 300 on all sides in there, which is perfect. So now we are done with our roof by extrusion. Now I'm going to talk about the roof by face in there. With a roof by face, it's quite a very simple study, but I'm going to be talking more about the roof by face when I get into the massing course, when I start teaching you guys about massing in there, which is going to be an in-depth study. I'm going to talk more about the massing shapes, and then also how you can use that massing tool to create kinds of roofs that you're going to want in each and every project that you might be working on. All right, so I'm just going to make a simple roof by massing in here, so you just probably get the concept of how that works in here. So I'm going to get back into level 1, and I'm going to delete all these reference planes in there, delete that, and you're going to have all these notifications in there which says that when you delete those sections, you're going to lose that section in there. All right, so I'm going to go back into level 1, and I'm going to head into my 3D view and just level 1 again, and just delete all of these walls out in there. Head into the 3D view, and I'm going to take away my roof by extrusion. All right, so I'm going to get back into level 1 in here, and we are going to now draw that roof by massing. So we are done talking about the roof by extrusion, and I just want to show you guys how the roof by face works. All right, so you need to make sure you are in the massing and site in there, and we are just going to select our show mass in there, and we are going to in place a mass in here. So with this, we can call this I'm going to leave it as the name as I'm going to leave it by the default name Revit is giving me in there, which is massing by 1, but you can rename that to any form that you want in there. So I have this shape in here, so I can select this in here and create that mass in here. I'm going to escape out of that, and I'm just going to select my create form, which I need to be my 3D view in there. Get back into level 1, escape out of there, cancel that, get back into architecture, get back into massing and site, and then just in place mass, and then OK in there. And I'm just going to draw a simple mass in here, which is perfect. And then I'm going to finish that, head into my 3D view. So you're going to notice we have this simple mass in here. So we are going to go into our edit mask, select that in there, and we can just create form, and we have this mask created in there. So we can move this up a little bit, and we can select this side, and then we can move this. I'm just trying to create a little bit kind of just some intricate design in here. All right, so this is too much. This is way too weird in here. So let me just move this to somewhere around here. All right, so I think this is fine, and we have this in here, so I can select this and extend this up a little bit. Okay, so I think I'm fine with this shape in here, and I'm just going to finish that. So we have this mask created in here, and we are going to place our roofs on this mask in here. So what I'm going to do now is we are going to head into our architecture tab, and then we are going to click on that drop down menu right beneath that roof in there, and then we are going to select our roof by face. All right, so you need to select that face you want to use as your roof. So I'm going to use this side as my roof and select that in there, and after selecting that, we are going to make sure we select our create roof in there. All right, so we have that roof created on this side in there. So I'm not going to use this side also as a roof. So I'm just going to use this form in here, and then we have that roof created on the side in there. And with this, I think when you go into there, you can have that construction by plump, and we have the 2 cuts in there, and we can change all of that in there as well, which is kind of perfect. And you can extend this in there if you did want that to cover that roof, this portion in here as well. So this is quite a very beautiful design in here we have just created. So this is just an example on how you can actually use the roof by mass in there, the roof by face in here. All right, so I'm going to be talking more about that, an in-depth study. I promise you guys I'm going to drop that in-depth study in there on how you can use that roof by face to the professional level, to an extreme level in there, just as I was taught by Balkan architect. So we have this created in there, which is quite beautiful in our design. Now I'm going to end everything in here, and I'm going to talk now about flat roofs. We are going to start talking about flat roofs and how we can create our flat roofs in here, and also use our shape editing tools to kind of create a slope in our flat roof to probably just join to a drain. All right, so I'm going to get into level 1 and I'm going to delete everything out of the way. So DE on my keyboard, and I tend to lose everything in my file in here. Okay, so now we are on level 1 in here, and we are going to talk about flat roofs now. So now I'm going to draw a simple wall in here. So I'm just going to select my 300 generic wall in there, and I'm just going to draw a simple wall out this way. So this is perfect. So now I have this wall drawn out. I'm going to head into the 3D view. Now you notice my walls goes out of level 2, so I'm going to select all those walls, or you can just put your mouse pointer in there, hit on the tab key, select all those walls, and I'm going to change this to level 2. Now when we are designing flat roofs in our design, we kind of want our walls to go up a little bit above the level 2, because we do not want to see the roof shape in there whilst it's on level 2. So we kind of want our walls to go all the way up a little above level 2 in there. That's basically the construction type of flat roof. So we are going to hit on tab key and then select that in there, and we are going to extend that a little bit. So with my top constraint, I'm going to leave that at unconnected, and I'm going to give it a top unconnected height of about, and I'm going to send it up a little bit of about 4,800 in there. All right, so now our roof goes up a little bit on 800 millimeters. All right, so when I measure that, we have that going all the way up to about 800 in there. All right, so if I should pick from here, and then I pick this surface in here, so we know, you notice we have that 800 offset from our level 2 line in there. All right, so now let me head back into our 3D view in there. So now we are going to start to draw our flat roof. I'm going to show you guys how you can use that shape editing tools in there. So let me get back into level 1, and I do want a little design in here. So I'm going to select this wall, create similar on my keyboard, and I'm going to extend this all the way to this side, and then extend this somewhere around here. Alright, so this is perfect, and I'm going to hit on my TR to trim this in here. So we have this shape in here, which is perfect. Alright, so I think I'm fine with this shape in here, so this is perfect. I'm going to get back into level 1. Now we need to now draw our roof in that shape in there. All right, so we need to draw our roof in there. So I'm going to get back into our roof in here, and I'm going to select our roof in here as well, and we are having this lower level notice in here. So we are definitely going to draw that roof to level 2 in here. So level 2, and then we are just going to select yes. All right, so now we are going to draw our roof, but before we draw our roof in there, you are going to notice we have the extend to wall call in there. Now what this extend to wall call does is that it's going to extend my roof to the structural part of this wall I have in here. All right, so my roof I'm going to draw is going to extend a little bit into the structural part of this wall I have in there. So we need to make sure we check that in there, and then we are going to use the pick line tools. All right, you are going to use the pick line tools, and then we draw that in there. So you're going to notice it's going to extend into the wall core. Now you're noticing that it's not extending in there into the wall core in there, because it doesn't, this wall is just a generic wall in there. It doesn't have layers inside of that wall. So I'm going to cancel that and just hit on yes and discard that. Select all those walls in there, and then I'm going to change all these walls to I'm going to change that to exterior brick on wall in there, and I'm going to change this to fine. All right, so now you're going to notice we have several layers in this wall in here. All right, so this is perfect. Now we are going to head back into our roof tab in there, select that roof, level 2, yes. So those are some of the things you need to pay attention to. So if you are using a generic wall, you haven't set up layers in that wall in there. So we are going to extend to wall core, and then we are going to use our pick line tool. Now when I use our pick line tool for the roof, now you're going to notice that the roof line in there extends into the structural part of that wall. So when I select all of these in there, you're going to notice it goes inside in there. All right, so with our generic wall, we didn't have that option in there, so we had to cancel out and then change all those walls to a wall that actually has those layers in there. All right, so we have the structural part in there. So the extend to wall call is going to extend that roof into the structural part of the wall you have in there. All right, so you need to make sure you set up the layers of your wall in there, and also you also need to make sure you set up the layers for your roof as well, but I'm going to be talking about that in a moment. Now we have all of these right angles in there, which definitely means our roof is going to have a slope in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of this in there. So escape out of that. I'm going to select all of these roof lines in there, and I'm going to uncheck the define slopes in there. All right, so when I uncheck that define slope in there and then I finish that, it says we have a short line. All right, so continue sketching, and we are going to notice some of our roof doesn't have I'm going to delete that line. So we kind of created a double line in there, so I'm going to finish that and don't attach. All right, so we are going to head into the 3D view, and then we have this roof in here. All right, so we have this roof finished on our level in here, our flat roof in here. So let me just select that roof. It's actually on level 2. All right, so this is perfect. We have this on level 2, which is perfect. All right, so this is okay in here. All right, so we have this wall going all the way up to level 2 in here. So now what we can do now is we need to make sure we join that roof to this wall in there. If I should cut a section in here, let me just cut a section through that roof in here. Okay, so this is perfect. Now I want my roof to look on this other side in this. So I'm going to extend the view of that section line in there, finish that, and then just click on that arrowhead in there. Now you're going to notice with the construction of our roof in there, let me just change this to fine. Now you're going to notice our roof and the wall construction kind of looks like the wall goes in between, goes inside of that roof, and then that roof also extends into the wall in there, which is bad. We do not want this type of representation in our section. So what you can do is you can head into the 3D view, and then you need to make sure you select the entire roof in there, and then you make sure you join that to this wall in there. And there's a perfect tool inside of Revit that does that, which is this join tool in there. All right, so you just have to click on that join tool in there, hit on the tab key, and then you join that to that roof in here as well. So you need to make sure you join. All right, so just escape out of there, head into your modify tab, select the join tool in there, and then you just make sure you select that roof you want to join that in. So just hit on the tab key and just make sure you select that roof, and then when that roof is selected, now you can just join that to that wall in there. So now you're going to notice it creates kind of like a space in there. All right, our roof tends to go all the way and sit on that structure part. You notice it creates some gap in there. I'm going to show you guys. So let me just make sure I select cancel out of there, and just make sure I select all of those in there, and then select this wall as well. Make sure I select this wall. Okay, escape, join, escape out of there, and select your join tool. Make sure you select your roof, and then you join that, join this, and have I joined this as well? All right, so what you can do is select your join tool, and then make sure you check your multiple join. All right, so that is why we were not able to join multiple in there. So you need to make sure you have eyes all over the software. So just select your join tool, and then now you notice we can join multiple roofs walls in here. All right, so now you're going to notice it creates some gap in there. All right, so our roofs tend to go and sit, our roof tends to go and sit on that structural part in there, all right, of our wall. So I'm going to select this wall, and this is joined in there as well. So I think this is not joined. Escape out of there and select that. Let me just select that roof. Okay, so I think this is joined in there. All right, it's joined in here. So now let's head into our section and line in there, and you're going to notice All right, so we didn't join this wall. So you're going to notice with this part, we have that gap in there. Our wall doesn't go inside of this roof in here. So we have this gap in there, which is the perfect representation you want to have in your section view. And when you check on this other side, you notice we didn't join that in there. So we need to go back into our 3D view in here, and then we select our join to, make sure we select that in here, and then we join that wall, and we also join, make sure you join this wall as well in there, and it's perfect. So now let's head into our section view. We have that joined in here, so this is perfect. So now we have our roof sitting on the structural part of our wall in here, which is kind of like perfect in there. So now what we are going to head on now to do is that we are going to create our slope in there. We need to create a kind of slope in there. You know, when you create flat roofs, it's not going to be really flat in there. It's not going to be a straight flat roof in there. You are definitely going to have some slopes in your roof in there. All right, so we are going to create that slopes. We are going to create all of those slopes inside of this flat roof we have in here. So now we are going to use, and I'm going to show you guys how you can use your shape editing tools in here. But before we do that in there, we need to make sure we set up the layers for our roof. I said that is very, very important. So we are just going to select this roof in there. We are going to head into edit type, and when we head into the edit type option in there, we are going to duplicate that, and we are going to call this roof sloped in there. We are going to call this roof sloped. All right, so you can name it whatever name you want in there. So I have my roof sloped in there. And when you do that, we are going to head into the construction tab, and then you're going to make sure you click on edit in there. All right, so when we head it into the edit tab, now you're going to notice we have just one layer in there. All right, so this is what I mean by setting up the layers. So we have just one layer in there, and we have that placed on structure in there. So with the structure, you're going to notice it's set by category. It means that we do not have any material specified to this structure in there. So what we can do is we can just click on those three dots in there, and then we head into our material, and we head into our material browser. So now when you head into the material browser in there, what you want to do, I have a series about material browsers in there, how you can create your own material in there. So you guys can head on in there, and then you can create your own material. Make sure you watch every single tutorial I have on my material browser series in there. So now we are going to look for a material we can use for our structure. All right, so we are going to use a concrete in there. We are going to use a concrete material, and I'm just going to select the concrete. Let me just use the cast in situ, and then I'm going to use render appearance, and hit on apply, hit on OK in there. So we have a specified material in there with a thickness. I'm going to change that to 200 millimeters in there. So we had a total of 400 for just the generic roof in there. All right, so I'm going to change this to 300 in there, and I'm going to insert two more layers in there. So I'm going to make sure I select this, and then I insert a layer on top in there, and I'm going to change this to a substrate. All right, so with this, I'm going to specify a material for this in there. I'm going to look for an insulation material. So let me just get an insulation material. We have exterior insulation material. I'm going to use the rigid insulation material in there, and okay in that as well. Now I'm going to specify a different thickness for that. I'm going to specify a thickness of 200 in there, and with this selected, I'm going to insert one more layer right above that in there. All right, so we have this going right above the substrate, and I'm going to change this to a finish one, and I'm going to give that also a finish material in there. So I'm going to look for a roofing finish material in Revit, and I think I'm fine with a roofing EPD. Okay, select that, hit on apply, hit on OK, and I'm going to give this of about just 30 mm in there. Now before you hit on your OK button in there, so let me head into the preview. You're going to notice we have our construction tab, our construction, which is a structure in there. So this is going to be at the bottom. All right, so now if I should change this to finish 2 in here, and just come in here and then hit on my preview, with the finish 2, it means that my finish level in here is coming to go on the top. Okay, let me change this to finish 1 and let me see. All right, so finish 1 is going to be on the top. All right, so you need to make sure you have that in mind. All right, so I'm going to change this back to a structure. All right, make sure you have this set up. All right, with the function. The function is very, very important. Make sure you have that set up to the right function. All right, so now before you finish that in there, with our substrate material, which is the 200, you are going to want to make sure you check your variable. All right, you're going to make sure you want to check the variable. Now when you check the variable, what this means is that with this material, which is this, we have with these boxes in there, which is the rigid insulation in there, is all of those boxes in there. What this does is that it's going to move all of those. It's going to create when we create the slope, this material is going to have that function, or that ability to be able to move from thick all the way to a thin line, all the way to a thick roof again. All right, so when you check that variable in there, it means that this material can squeeze in. All right, it can squeeze in and come all the way. It can come all the way from down in here and then also go up in there, and then we can have our slope point in the middle. Now most of you guys are not going to understand this until I draw that roof in there, so just make sure you check your variable. All right, for your substrate material, make sure it's checked in there, and then you can just click on OK, and then you finish that in there, and then you can click on OK in there. So we've set up that in there. So now when I head into any of the section view in there, you're going to notice with the structure part, Revit recognizes that with our roof material, we have the structure part in there. So we've extended, Revit extends only the structure part to sit also on the structure part of your wall in there, which is perfect for a section view. All right, so this is the kind of representation you are going to want to have in your section view. All right, and then we have this. Let me just turn on my thin lines. I'm not going to save that. And then we have all of this finished materials right on top of our roof in there. All right, so this is what we want to have in here. So just the structure part goes and sit in there. If I should change the function, that is why I said you guys should make sure you specify the function correctly. So if I should change the function of this concrete material to a finish, it's not going to sit on this structure part we have in there. So once I change that to structure, it's going to sit on that structure part of our wall in there, which you need to know that as well. So now I'm going to head into the 3D view, and I'm going to draw out my pick points, my points for my slope in there. So I'm going to head into level 2, and I'm going to delete that. Okay, so let me just move. I'm not going to delete that section line. I'm going to move this in here. All right, so this is perfect in there. So what you want to do is we want to make sure we select that roof in there. All right, so we are not going to have the option to select the roof by hitting on the tab key. All right, so what we can do is we can select everything. We can filter out, check none, and then just select only our roof. Hit on apply, hit on OK. So now you notice we select just that roof in there. So now we are going to talk about these shape editing tools in there. All right, so this is all the tools Revit is going to give you. This is all the tools Revit is going to give you to actually use that to draw your slope in there. All right, so we have what we call the add point, we have the add split line, and then we have the pick supports. So I'm going to demonstrate all of these commands in here. All right, so now the add point, what the add point does is, with the add points in there, that is what we are going to use to define our slopes in each of our roof areas. All right, so that add point is going to define the slope for each of our roof areas, and then with the add spline is going to define a high point for our roof in there. And then with the pick supports, I'm going to talk about that when we are going to adjust those roofs to a framing as well. All right, so this is what we have in here. So now what we want to do now is we want to add a split line in there. So we want to define the high point of our roof. So now you're going to notice with this roof design I have in here, we have two parts in there. We have two different areas. So I'm going to select that, hit on filter. This is kind of a lot of work for me, so I'm going to hit on apply, hit on OK in there. So now you're going to notice with the area of our roof, we have about 141 in there, which is very big. So now I'm going to want to define the roof into two parts. All right, so I'm going to define just this side as one part, and then give it a slope in the middle, and then define this part also as a different part, and then give it separate slope also in the middle in here. All right, so I'm going to do that. Now if I should click on my add split line to define that, it's not going to snap on the wall. So let me show you guys that. So add split line. All right, so when you click on the split line, if I should move this to, I wanted to draw on that line in there. If I should move this to draw on that line, you notice it's not snapping to that wall in there. All right, so now there's another way you can do that. Just escape out of that in there. So what Barkan Architect taught me was that you need to get into your annotate tab, and when you head into your annotate tab, you can just make sure you click on your detail line. When you click on your detail line, make sure you change this to a wide line so we can just see that in there, and then you select all of those roof edges in there. All right, so make sure you select all of those roof edges in there. All right, and you can just make sure you extend this, because I said we'll be dividing the roof into different parts in there. So escape out of there, select that detail line again, and then we're going to create just a diagonal line through those roof areas in this, so we can just snap to the center of this line. So now if I should select everything in here, filter and check none, and then just select only the roofs, hit on apply, hit on OK in there. Now we have those thick lines in there. So now I'm going to add the split line, and then you notice it snaps now to the edges of our wall, which is correct. So we have this in there. So we are going to draw this in there. I'm going to set this as a chain and just draw this in here, and also draw this all the way in here, and draw this in here as well, and also draw this in here. So escape, and also pick add a split line for this in here, and then we can draw this in here, and then we can draw this all the way in here, and then draw this in here, and finish this. All right, so we finished that in there. And when we select everything in here in our roof, let me head into the 3D view. All right, so I'm just going to hide all these level lines in there, EH on your keyboard. So when you select all of those roofs in there, you're going to notice nothing really happens in our roof in there. That is because we haven't added our points in there. All right, so now when you select that roof, and then we go into our modify sub elements, and then we are going to head into sub level 2 in there. All right, so now when we head into the level 2, we are going to have a drainage point. All right, we are going to create that drainage point where we want all of the water pouring on top of our roof should slope into. All right, so we are going to add that point in there, and you see we kind of like now have that option to select the center of the area of this wall in there. So we are going to place that point in there, and then we are going to place this point in here as well. So now I'm going to head into the 3D view. Now after placing those points, escape out of there. After placing, let me select those roof. Now after placing those points in there, you're also going to notice nothing really happens in there. Right, so let's just get back into modify sub elements, and then when you click on that dot in there, all right, we have the option to change that slope in there. So I'm going to give it a slope of -100. All right, let's just start with 100. I'm going to give it a slope of -100. I'm going to do the same thing for this, also give it -100 in there, and then I'm going to finish that in there as well. All right, so now I'm now going to escape out of there and finish that. Now our roof tends to slope in there. Now if I should change this to, let me change this to a realistic form. All right, so now when I change this to a realistic form in there, you're going to notice we have that roof sloping in there. We have a little bit of slope on that roof in there, right, which is perfect. So now let me head into level 1, and then let me drag this section line in that view in there. So let me just bring this a little bit closer in there, which is perfect. Now head back into your level 1 view in there. Now you're going to notice we have that slope in here. All right, so let me get into level 1 and extend this somewhere around here. All right, so section view, and you're going to notice we have that slope in there. All right, so this is what I meant by the variable. All right, so with our rigid material, you are noticing it's had that variable of the roof sloping inside into that the insulation material we have in here. All right, so you're going to notice our roof slopes into that insulation material. So that was why that is why we have this this view in here. All right, that is why we have this kind of slope showing that in here. All right, so we can click on this in there, and then we can head into our modify sub elements, and then we can change that slope in there. All right, so I'm going to escape out of that. So that is why we needed to check the function of the variable, so that this material can be sloped into. All right, so we can have that slope in there. If I should measure this from this to somewhere around here in there, you're going to notice we have 147, and with this we are going to have that 200. All right, we are going to have that 200 in there. So we have that 200 in here. So that is the function of the rigid material in there. Since I knew my rigid material in there, so I can't slope that into my concrete. I can't slope that into the structure part, which is the concrete part. So I need to make sure I slope that just on the insulation material I had on top of that roof in there. All right, so that is why we needed to check the variable for the rigid insulation material, because we can't slope into the concrete structure in there. And that is why I also gave it a slope of -100. All right, so it slopes in there. I can give it a slope of -200, but then you notice we had some 30 millimeters in there, which is perfect. So you need to make sure you just have a little gap on top in there as well, which is kind of perfect. So this is how you can use those shape editing tools in there to kind of create a slope on top of your roofs in there, which is kind of perfect. So I hope you guys have learned something on this course, on this topic, which is our slope, creating our slopes on flat roofs. You can notice we have that slope in there. All right, so now I'm going to show you guys how you can adjust a flat roof to a framing just as Barkan Architect has also taught me. I'm going to show you guys how you can actually do that also on here on Revit. So I'm going to show you guys how you can do that. So I'm going to get back into level 1, and I'm going to delete every single thing I have in here. So just delete all of that, and I'm going to create, I'm just now going to create grid lines. So I'm going to make sure I'm in the architecture tab, and then I'm going to create some grid lines in here, just simple grid lines. Just create some simple grid lines. 500 is fine. I'm going to send this here, and also 500 of here is fine. And we need to create 3 more grid lines on this side as well. So I'm going to extend this somewhere around here, and I'm going to change this to A. All right, so when you change this to A, Revit is also automatically going to recognize that you are using the alphabetical order. So every grid you actually going to create is going to follow that pattern. So you're going to use 5,005 meters. So create that. So now you notice we've changed that itself to B, right? So if I change that this to a number, it's going to continue from that number. So you need to pay attention to that. I've spoken severally about that in my working drawing series. All right, so I have this in here. So this is perfect. I'm going to move this up a little bit, and I'm going to hit on the check too, and also check all of those grids in there. So you can do the same for this parts as well. So now I have this created in here. Now I'm going to create what do I create? I'm going to create some columns on this grid in there. I'm going to create some columns on this grid to demonstrate how you can use the adjust to the roof framing. All right, the pick supports in our shape editing tools. So now you need to go into the structure tab in there, and we are going to select our column. All right, so now you're going to notice we have just this one steel column loaded up inside of our software. All right, so now I'm going to create the columns to be on each and every single grid points I have in here. All right, so my columns are going to sit on all of those grids. So I'm going to select add grids in there, and then I'm going to select all of these grids, and then I'm going to finish that. I need to make sure I set the depth and this very correctly. So you notice we have an error in there. So I'm going to set the depth height. I'm going to change this from depth to height. With the depth is going to go down, with the height is going to go up. So I'm going to set this all the way up to level 2, and I'm going to do select add grids, and then select all of that in there, and I'm not going to finish that now. So you notice we have all of those columns created in there. All right, so Now you can actually hit on your space bar, the space key on your keyboard, and then it changes the orientation of those columns in there, which is something you need to know as well. You need to have that at the back of your mind. It changes all of those orientation in there. All right, so it's something you can make sure you get to know about that. Then I'm going to finish that in there. So now I'm going to escape out of the way. I'm going to head into my 3D view. Okay, so I'm going to delete this roof in there, head into any of my right elevation. So initially we selected our depth, which sent all of our columns down. So I'm going to delete all of those in there, and we have these 3 columns framings in here. All right, so we have all of this in here, and I'm going to go into level 2 and just delete all of these lines. All right, just make sure I select that and delete all of these lines. Just select that, delete all of these lines. Just make sure you select, hold down your control key, and then delete all of these lines. All right, so I'm going to head into level 2, and let me just get into the 3D view and use this as the 3D view. So I'm going to use the 3D view. All right, I'm going to use that 3D view in there, and with this I'm going to select everything in the center in here, everything on the center in here, and with the top offset I'm going to give it negative 200 in there, or should go down to negative 200 in there. So it's not going to be as the same height of this. All right, so I want to have that slope in the middle. All right, so I want it to have that slope in the middle in here. All right, so it's going to have that slope in there. Okay, so now we are going to draw our beam, our horizontal member, to attach all of this in there. All right, so attach all of these columns together. So we can select that beam in there, and when you select that beam, what you need to do is we just have one loaded in our software. So we are not structural engineers, so we just have that in there. So we are going to select our 3D snapping, and I'm going to make sure I select my chain, and then I'm going to select this. And with a 3D, when you check the 3D snapping, we can actually snap in our 3D view. So you can notice we can draw that in our 3D view in there. So I'm going to draw that from the center of that roof to this part in here, and I'm going to select this, and then also move this in here, which is perfect. Now I'm going to do the same thing in this. So just make sure you just snap all of that in there to the various parts of all of those columns in there. So just doing that, and I'm done with that. All right, so when I head in here to this part, you're going to notice we have this slope a little in there all the way to the center in there. All right, so now we are going to draw our roof in here. All right, so I'm going to draw that roof. I'm going to head into architecture and just click in here, roof by footprint, and I'm going to draw just a simple roof from this point and also to this point as well. Hit on escape, and I'm going to select all of those roofs and then uncheck the define slopes in there. So I'm going to hit on check, and I'm going to head into my 3D view. So when you head into your 3D view, you're going to have this roof in here. All right, you're going to have this roof, which is kind of bad. So now how can we adjust this roof to actually fit on top of all of these framings I have in there? So what you can do is you can select that in there, and then we now have to check our pick supports. All right, so when you select your pick supports in there, you just make sure you select all of those supports in there. Make sure you select all of those supports, and then you select all of these supports in there. So make sure all of those supports are selected. It's going to slope everything in there to that center. All right, and we hit on our escape in there, and then we have this roof sloping on fitting exactly on all of that supports in there. So that's how we use that pick supports in our shape editing tools. All right, so now that is how you can use that in there. So we've spoken, select that, we've spoken about our add point, add split line to define the high points in there, and then we have the pick supports, which we just demonstrated in here. All right, so this is perfect. Now, so I guess you guys have learned something in this part. I'm going to move on to the next part in our part 3, where I'm going to talk more about dormer roofs in there and how you can create openings inside of your roof in there. All right, so this is perfect. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. I'll be bringing out more tutorials like this. I'll catch you guys in the next part of our tutorial. Peace out. I'm still working real hard on a Saturday. My future I don't see from a mile away.